Okay, after you have created your products, you can count on your results. The results affect your product. They are effects of your product, direct effects of your product, and they do affect your organization. You can see them during the product or just after them. What is important is that, well, you can expect them, and you may assume that they will happen, and they will come to you, because they depend on the product, and they depend on you. They are the changes you decide to happen. They are not basically dependent on the environment. And an example of a result is, in our case, a real-time access to the electronic records of the customers. This way, as you know, we will approach our main objective to decrease, to shorten the time of dealing with one customer. So these are the results, and then there's influence, which is a little bit different, because they are indirect. I mean, they should happen, they often happen. You count on the fact that they will happen, and you even expect them to happen, but sometimes they do not, or usually they do not depend only on you, on your project. So sometimes you don't even need to plan them directly, but let's say you count on them. The thing is that, well, if we deal with European grants and things like that, actually the influence is connected with the objectives of the total policy. This is a little bit paradoxical, but if we think deeper, we may understand that, well, let's say that policy is to lower the unemployment rate, but other things except our project, which is, let's say, just to teach people some important skills, other things may affect the final influence, and those things being like the overall business climate and so on, which we cannot affect. So the difference between influence and results is that you cannot control everything connected with the influence. And actions are the things you do, the things you buy, the things you do, the things you need to plan. Like writing a programming code is an action, and this is what you plan to do, and after you have finished your action, you will get your product, which is this kind of operating system, helping your employees to deal with the customers. We can organize everything, beginning from the problem, in one practical thing, which is called a logical frame matrix, and it is a useful tool. So it is using simple words, a piece of paper on which you have this kind of a matrix, of a table, and it is organized like that. Here you've got your goals, purposes, results, activities, and here you've got things that show that they're actually happening, like your goal or an objective is to do something, then how you can measure it, who is going to provide you with the information, and some assumptions showing your logic of thinking. As you can see, this logical frame is not exactly filled in with the things that I've been talking about, but if we think a little bit more, we may say that this is more or less the same. And I'm using this example because, well, if you bump into something like that, you should not be scared. Everything works the same. Like there's somewhere outside there's the problem definition, so there's nothing here, but we've got our objectives or goals here, and we have our results and activities, so we would also count on products somewhere there, but it is more or less the same. So there was this first approach, and there can be other approaches towards dealing with projects and project planning, and the other that we are going to focus on from now on is WBS structure, and this is more commercial, more business oriented, but I would argue that first of all, any approach that is based on project thinking and so on is close to any other. So the differences between this logical framework approach that I've been talking up to now and WBS that I am going to use from now on are not that great. They are not that great, and the similarities are important. If we deal with our systems approach, then we can understand that everything is more or less the same. Our systems approach is the same for any kind of project management approach that we can actually deal with. Always there is an input, always there is an output, and something inside and something outside the environment, feedbacks, and so on. So in case of let's say this European approach, we have our input as resources, output as results, something in between, so it always works the same. As you will see also in case of WBS, we have a similar approach. So our output are objectives. In case of our systems approach, input, problems and resources, and inside we have the actions. And also what is important is to remember our modular approach towards things, towards problem solving, fixing things, and so on. What we do basically in the WBS technique is that we divide our whole project into smaller pieces, and this is WBS approach. It can also be understood with this systems approach. So what is WBS and how to use it? So basically it comes from work breakdown structure, which means that we divide our work into pieces, and we also need to define our problem first, then the general project, then we go into sub-objectives after having the general problem, the general objective, and then we go to particular tasks, and the tasks are the level that we are working on. This is where actually the name comes from, work breakdown structure, because it focuses on the work we need to do. So our tasks are the basic unit, and we divide everything into tasks. So what is a task? Well, formally it is a working package. So things that can be done by one team or one person, subcontractor, whatever, can be a task. And we can set the objectives to each task. We can define our tasks, every task separately, and we can pay for each task separately. So the tasks are the little parts of the project that we need to divide it into, and we plan the total project using this division. So a task, in case of a task, you can define all the responsibilities in a proper way. You can describe them. You can show what resources you actually need to deal with them, and how much time you need, how much it is going to cost you, and what you are going to get out of each task, and what precognitions, so let's say what tasks need to be prepared, need to be finished before you start this one, and what kind of risk is connected to a task. So if you can describe your task using all those things, then well, the task is properly defined. If you cannot, you probably need to divide your task into some smaller pieces, like that. So this is a way of dealing with your tasks. So let's say that an apple is your whole project and you divide it into pieces. Okay. The thing is that we do divide our projects into smaller pieces, of course, but we try not to make them too small, because it would be too complicated and it is not effective. If you have too many tasks, you cannot deal with them, and it would also mean micromanagement, which is a bad thing, because you pay too much attention to the details and you should not. Okay, so it may sound a little bit abstract, but a task is a thing that you divide your project into, and a task is a thing that can be done by one person, one team, and can be characterized by many things that I've been talking about a minute ago. Let's have a look at an example which can be, I hope, plausible enough for everybody to understand. Let's assume that we want to build a home, we want to have a home, we want to build a house for ourselves. So what do we do is actually we divide the whole project into pieces, as in the WBS techniques. So we are using our imagination, our knowledge, our experience, if we have any. So let's say that we begin with our walls and ceilings. So raw states is, the beginning, and then you finish everything, and then insulation, and then frames and doors and window frames and the door windows, but we also need plasters, and we also need floors. So we divide the floors into parquets and into marbles, why not? And so this is going to be a great part of our project. These are tasks here. And another part is our foundations. As you can see, well, usually when we build in reality, we start with the foundations, but at the moment we are designing. So this is our brainstorming part. So we could start with the walls, and then we go to the foundations. In case of foundations, we need to deal with the terrain for sure, and then with the foundations, with building them, and then the roof, and then there's the roof, so the construction and the tiling of the roof, and this is it, and then finally fixtures and fittings, which means everything that has not been done up to today, so water, gas, whatever we need, plumbing system for sure, and gas fittings, and solar system, why not, also so wiring, and this is it. So as you can see, these are our objectives. So our objective is to have a home. These are our sub-objectives, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what we do next is to come up with other sub-objectives until we get like here, and these are tasks. So the easy definition of a task, well, is a thing that is at the very bottom of your project design. Okay, so the very last part, the smallest parts of your project plan are your tasks. So tasks are only this one and this one, also this one, but also this one, and also this one, and also this one, but not this one, because it is to be divided into this one and also this one, and so on. Everything that is bigger than a task and can be divided into tasks is not a task. Okay, it's a sub-objective. We don't use objectives and sub-objectives in this context often, but what we do use are the tasks. Okay, so this was to show you the tasks, and so now you know the basic idea of WBS. So you divide everything into tasks, going from the whole until the very last pieces. So this is a form of an inverted tree, of course. You begin with the main objectives, and then you go to the working packages, which are the tasks. The important thing is to formulate the right objective and to break those objectives into the proper packages. Let me say once again, so working package, a task, is a thing that can be done by one team of people or one person. This is it. This is the main rule. So to sum up, as we could see using both of the approaches, what is important is to have good objectives, and first of all, in order to have the good objectives, you need to also, or first of all, plan your problem, or you need to identify your problem, then you plan your objectives. And if you want anyone else to finance your project, you also need to suit the requirements of this person, of this institution, and so on. What is also important is that using SMART objective is practical and useful, and often there is a requirement, an explicit requirement to do so, so you just need to do so. When you have your objectives completed, you can plan all the rest. Summing up the WBS, so it is easy to understand for everybody. It is a great mental tool for your brainstorming. It is a great mental tool to make you think about everything. Finally, even though at the very beginning, as in our example of a home, first you would think about the walls and then about the foundations. Why not? Okay, you can arrange everything once again later on, and we will talk about planning your project in time next time. So first you prepare your WBS and then you go to the schedule. You cannot do the other way around. And if you have your tasks planned, then you can think about people to deal with the tasks. Okay. Of course, if you have completed a project or two, all the next projects are going to be easier for you because you already know how to plan them, how to divide them. If we were to compare the both approaches, I mean WBS and the log frame, so they do apply to slightly different kinds of projects, but I would argue that the basic ideas are the same. As I was trying to demonstrate, always you begin with the problem actually and with your objectives, and if you really want to, you could describe any kind of project with any kind of approach, and it would be useful. We are going to stick to this WBS approach, but well, it is good to know that there are other approaches also. So what is important today? Well, it is important to be able to tell the difference between, let's say, your objectives and resources and tasks and products, and what is the most important, what you begin with when you want to start with your project, and what comes next, and so on. And also you should be aware of the fact that, well, there are different approaches towards project planning, but the core is always the same. So this is why I'm spending some time on, let's say, systems approach and so on. One practical issue when you deal with your clients and you need to, let's say, formulate an agreement and specify what you want to achieve and so on. First of all, write everything down, then send it immediately to everybody by email and make sure that everything has been accepted. The reason is that defining the right objectives and understanding the objectives and all the criteria and so on is so extremely important, because everything else, to begin with the costs and your price for, let's say, product management, or your price for planning the project, for executing the project, depends on it. Strictly depends on the description of what you actually want to achieve. Okay, so those first parts, like defining your problem, defining your objectives, are crucial, even though afterwards you only think about your tasks. And this is going to be all for today. Thank you very much, and